Okay. Hello and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 21st episode of Psych Talks with Psychologist. And I'm your host, Ms. Basha, Director at ICHAS, Institute of Clinical Hypnosis and Related Sciences. Today we have with us Nitin again, and he's going to talk about cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy. And I'm going to give you a brief introduction about Nitin before we move ahead. He's a CEO at iChas, also a head, trainer at iChas. He's one of the first person in the world to be able to seamlessly integrate different approaches of psychology, be it cognitive, behavioral, humanistic, psychodynamics, into a comprehensive, eclectic approach. And it is offered in a structured form for helping mental health care practitioners develop advanced coaching and therapeutic skills. I'm talking about the course Cognitive Hypnotic Psychotherapy, which is also the topic for today, and about our organization as it helps the mental health care practitioners to develop advanced coaching and therapeutic skills, and we also conduct different other initiatives with our NGO wing, which is IHS Support Foundation. So yes, welcome Nathan on the Psych Talks.
Thank you, Misbah. How are you today?
I am good.
It's actually funny asking you this question over a video call. I mean,
uh, I get it. So, Nathan, just if you want to add one or two lines from your end for your introduction, and then I can start with our topic.
no, so actually, I think the introduction that you've given for me is good enough. I've already been there on the episode earlier. So hopefully, a lot of people are back with what we had done earlier. So the introduction I think is good enough. Thank you.
Okay. So, I would like to ask, or like, I would like to begin by asking you to tell us about what is cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy.
So, Misbah, as you in the introduction that you gave about cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy, I think that's actually an apt introduction. That it's a field of therapy that's eclectic, which integrates all of these major approaches to psychology into a single seamless approach. We have processes from cognitive therapies, behavioral therapies, uh, from humanistic approach, and from psychoanalysis, and they're all
Mm-hmm.
integrated into a single approach, a single curriculum. Now, the important thing to know about cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy is it's not just mixing of these techniques together. The idea is to work with these different approaches in a way in which, when you work with clients, you can actually see it as parts of a bigger machine, right? And
Okay.
all of these individual parts or approaches kind of seamlessly get integrated when you're working with clients. So it's not that today I'm going to use cognitive therapy with a client and tomorrow I'm going to use behavioral therapy with a client, right? It's more about how in a session we may begin with a cognitive approach, bring in the behavioral approach, if required, move on to metaphors and to psychodynamics, and then eventually bring it back to cognitive approach when we are closing the entire session. And it's done in a way in which, for the client, it's not like you've used different techniques. You're not jumping from one technique to another. For the client, it's almost like a seamless process, right? For them, it
Mm-hmm.
comes across as one individual approach that you have followed. It's just created in a way in which it borrows from a lot of approaches uh, to be able to cover the limitations that individual approaches have, and to
Mm-hmm.
be able to benefit from the strengths that each of these approaches have.
Okay. That sounds quite interesting and very, very, very comprehensive to me. So, Nathan, let's quickly say hi to everybody who's come online as of now. Hello, everybody who's joined us. Welcome to the Psych Talks, which we are on the 21st episode. Topic is cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy by Nitin Shah. And feel free to ask if you have any kind of questions in the comment section, and we'll surely answer them. You can also start a watch party so that your friends and family can also benefit out of the session. So, going ahead, Nitin,
So
what
I
I
would
would,
also
yeah,
probably once take a moment and thank all of the people who are
yeah,
watching the video right now,
okay, go
right?
ahead, go ahead.
And a lot of you have been there with the for the True Talk series that we had earlier. If you have been a part of that series, then please share, say hi, and let us know that you have been a part of that series. What I'm going to talk about is more like conceptual summary of everything that we have already done in the True Talks for eclectic therapy. Having said that, if you have any questions about the cognitive approach or about the eclectic approach, then please feel free to ask me. I'm sure, because we have the word hypnosis in the title itself, if you have any questions about that, then please go ahead and ask me that also.
Absolutely. I think that should create all the more curiosity among people to explore it. So I'm going ahead with my question, Nathan, that what inspired you to this work to integrate, all these fields together or these
So,
modalities together?
all right. So, Misbah, when I started, I actually came from a
Mhm.
very different field. I got into this field because I had certain personal challenges that I wanted to sort out. Now, as a part of that, I started researching on how the mind works and how thoughts influences our life and so on. And that's how I got introduced to the whole concept of working with human mind, right?
Right.
I explored a lot on it, and then I eventually joined a course which was on hypnosis, which I think completely changed my life, because when I did
Mhm.
that course, I recognized how much more there is to mind than what we thought we know.
Hmm.
And this was true not just for me, because in the program I came across a lot of practicing psychologists. There were people who were psychiatrists who were in the program. There were people who had been practicing psychology
Hmm.
and therapy for like at that time I was what, 24, so probably people had more experience than my
Hmm.
age was when I attended that program, right? And
Hmm.
the fact that each of them were able to find new things from the program told me that the field is incredibly vast, which is one. Second, I kind of, when I was researching on how the mind works, I realized a lot of these concepts, they were more abstract when I would explain them. Hypnosis gave me a very concrete and a very logical way of explaining things to people in terms of how my understanding of mind is and how we can use that to be able to create a change in people's life. So that's where I began my journey in the field of hypnosis. By the time I completed my course, I knew that I wanted to get into this field as a trainer and so on, which eventually I became. But what changed things for me was the next program that I attended, which was an NLP. Because when I did NLP, while I was very fascinated by the techniques and the the speed at which those techniques will work, because I'd already done hypnosis, I could see how NLP was extensively using hypnosis as a part of its curriculum. While the NLP practitioners and the NLP trainers would not really say it out loud, but the techniques, all change processes in NLP, if you know what hypnosis is, you will recognize are based in hypnosis. And that's when I also started recognizing how hypnosis not just be used independently, but it's actually like one of those threads that can connect other fields together. My understanding got more solidified when I did a course in CBT, because that's where, classically a lot of people would tell me that CBT is very different from what you do in hypnosis and so on. But when I went through the CBT program, and to be true, obviously I had a really good trainer in Shishir to be able to explain the concepts of CBT for us. But when I went through those concepts, I did recognize that a lot of these things are things that I'm already doing with hypnosis in a slightly different way, right? And that's again became another reason why I thought maybe these fields can be clubbed together, combined together in a more seamless way. Eventually, what drove me into the area of integrating all of these things and looking at it like a more structured career or curriculum is when participants who were doing hypnosis programs and NLP programs with us came back to us asking us, Nitin, I'm not sure whether I should hypnosis, I should use CBT, or should I be applying psychoanalysis if they've learned that, or should I be applying transaction analysis with a client? And I kept thinking about it as, why are you looking at whether A or B? It has to be how I can club them together. And our interactions with our students told us that they found it difficult because they were learning this as individual courses. And that's where
Right.
we decided to bring it all together into a single curriculum and help people understand how these things can be integrated, which was one. And it also then gave people a, what should I say, a reference point, so that in future, if they do any other course, see, mind sciences are ever evolving, right? I'm
Right.
sure tomorrow there may be some other course that will come up which talks about mind in a slightly different way. Again, I would not like my participants to be confused. Should I use techniques from the new program or everything that I've learned earlier? So the way we devised this curriculum in cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy was to ensure that anything that you have learned in psychology prior to this and anything that
Mhm.
you will learn after this, you should be able to incorporate it with what you have learned with us and make your
Okay.
practice more comprehensive. So that's how the evolution took place. When we started with cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy in its initial phase, it was like around 8 years back,
Mm.
right? I thought what we created as a curriculum was brilliant. But today, when I look back at the curriculum, I realize what we have today is probably far, far better than what we had 7, 8 years back. So yeah, and obviously over the years, because we have had people who have got trained with us, they've worked with clients, they've come back and they've given us their feedback in terms of how they're applying it with their clients, what
Mhm.
results they're getting, where they were stuck earlier, how they are able to make use of these things today that they were getting stuck at earlier, has also made it easier for us to evolve our curriculum and make it like really, really comprehensive.
Mhm. So my next question, Nathan, is going to be that can you share your journey of in terms of how how CHP, that is the cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy, evolved? Like I've it just comes to my mind, as CHP पूरा sentence बोलना बाद में समझ में आता है कि पूरा sentence बताना है, because we usually refer the term CHP.
Correct. So, Misbah, what I shared with you right now is actually the journey that we have gone through with CHP, right? The only additional things about this is that when we launched this program, we invited certain teachers, psychology teachers, to be a part of the program to understand what their feedback would be about the course. Based on their feedbacks, we were able to further modify the program before we like officially started conducting it. I have been practicing it for years before we actually launched it, because a lot of what we are doing today is a result of the work that I do with clients.
Right.
True. So that's what the evolution has actually been.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So Nathan, yes, my main question or my curiosity question is, tell us more about hypnosis, or all about hypnosis, if you
Okay. So for us personally, hypnosis is a process to help people do what they want to do, but they are not able to do. Okay.
can you explain
Uh,
it?
I let me give you an example. So let's say someone
Yeah,
wants to wake up in the morning and go for an exercise, right? So consciously they want
Mhm.
to do it,
Yeah.
but they still are not able to do it, right? And people will actually come and tell you that in the morning when the alarm rings, it's almost like I have a conflict with myself. There's one part of me which is saying 10 more minutes, and there's another part of me which actually says that utja, and eventually the 10 more minutes wins and I keep sleeping, right? So
Yeah.
we kind of look at this as the part of me which wants to wake up is the conscious part, because that's the conscious decision that I took. And yet there is a part of me which plays up automatically, unconsciously in specific situations, which stops us from doing certain things that I want to do, right? Or which makes me do certain things that I want to stop doing, like in the case of smoking, where I want to quit, but every time I see a cigarette, it's almost like on an autopilot, my hand goes, picks up the cigarette, and I start smoking. And then later on, I realize, oh, I'm smoking again.
Hmm.
So this conflict between the part that's making a decision and the part which is controlling my involuntary actions is what we address with hypnosis. The part that is used for making decisions is the conscious. The one that is uh, controlling our involuntary actions is what we call as the unconscious. And through hypnosis as a process, we try to create an alignment between the conscious and the unconscious, so that whatever the conscious wants or decides is what we are able to help the unconscious to get in line with. And that's predominantly what hypnosis is for us.
Okay. Now, then I would like to also ask you about, since I am aware about hypnosis, and we do practice in our daily lives and with our clients, and we teach that hypnosis, we know, is a state and a skill also. Can you throw some light on that and share some examples on that?
In the application of hypnosis, state is the state of receptivity.
Yes.
And they tell us that I want to create a change, but I'm not able to. That's why they're coming to us in the first place, right?
Right.
So what
Yeah.
they're saying is consciously I've made a decision, but my unconscious is not in a state to accept the decision, is not acting upon the decision.
Mm-hmm.
So hypnosis state is that state where you can impress upon the unconscious what the conscious has chosen so that the unconscious can support us. Skill is a skill from a practitioner's point of view. A lot of people think inducing a hypnotic state is a difficult task. That's actually the easier bit. The skill that a practitioner requires is to be able to work with the client in that state, because in that state there is a lot that can be done. Whether you want to take the client into a past memory, whether you want them to just accept a particular suggestion, whether you want them to be able to imagine something about the future, whether you want them to be able to observe their thoughts so that you can then use a thought restructuring process to restructure those thoughts, or do you want to work with phobias where the thoughts are so fast that the client is just consciously not able to become aware of it, and conscious restructuring is very difficult for that. So you want to use thoughts. So the skill sets that you require as a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist is not about inducing a hypnotic state. As I said, that's the easier bit. The actual skill set is how do you actually work with the client once the client is in that state.
So do you have any example to share of from your practice? How would you go about doing a process with somebody who has a phobia?
Okay.
Because I think that will give a clarity to to our viewers about how the process actually works. Uh, and that might also clear their myths and misconceptions also if they have some.
Okay, so I'm not going to talk only about hypnosis now, because as I said,
Mhm.
we actually use a more eclectic approach where a lot of
Right.
other processes are being used. So I'll talk about where we are using hypnosis more extensively, but I am going to
Mhm.
share a case example, which becomes kind of easier, right? So
Right.
the particular process that we use for phobia is called fast phobia cure. It actually comes from NLP,
Mhm.
right? But I'm going to break down the process for you to understand how that process is actually using principles from multiple tools. So when a client comes to us for phobia or for phobia cure, so
Mhm.
as to say, obviously the first thing is for us to ask them what is the phobic object,
Mhm.
right? That's where you're taking a more conscious cognitive interview. You're helping them identify, if they don't know already what the phobic object is, you're helping them identify what was the past experience where they had that particular episode, right? And also if they can tell us what their observable response was during the phobia, that
Mhm.
can add, that can help.
Mhm.
Now, once this conscious interview is done, we know that the client has a story playing in their mind. But with
Mhm.
phobias, the story is so fast that the client is consciously not aware of it. But if you actually ask a client, what makes you phobic of a cockroach? Most of them will tell you, I don't know, I just look at it and then hell breaks loose. They don't really have a reason why their mind is creating that exaggerated response. They may, in a retrospect, think and say, ki, oh, I'm worried it'll bite me or it'll kill me. But that's all retrospective thoughts. That's not the thought that's happening in the moment when they're actually responding the way they're responding. Right?
Right.
So, if I want to restructure that thought or that story from a cognitive point of view, I need to be able to identify the story first.
Mhm.
And that's where we will use hypnosis from an NLP point of view, where you will actually guide them into a process where they would imagine themselves on a screen, and then in the screen you will create a pause. But the idea is for them to get into an altered state where they can create a pause between when they observe the phobic object and when they have the phobic reaction. And in
Mhm.
that pause, to be able to tell us exactly what's happening in their head. Because they're in an altered hypnotic state where they're more receptive, they're more in touch with their unconscious, it's easier for them to understand what those unconscious thought patterns are. Once we know the story, right? Now, because the story is playing really fast, trying to change it consciously is possible, it will require a lot of effort. And the client has to like
Mhm.
go through a lot of struggle. So I can also use the hypnotic process or the NLP process to be able to change that story from what it is right now, which is more traumatic, into a more funnier, more humorous story, right?
Mhm.
And condition the new story with the same trigger, which in this case, let's say, is a cockroach, which means we are also bringing in the conditioning principle from behavioral psychology.
Mhm.
So in this one
Right.
NLP process of fast phobia cure, we have actually incorporated actually not us technically. NLP fast to be a cure comes from NLP, which is Bandler and Grinder's work. But in that one process, they've been able to incorporate cognitive, behavioral, and hypnotic principles in a single process.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that's
For
a.
us, this just becomes an example. And there are a lot
Mhm.
of other techniques that we work on now, which may not be a part of classical NLP, but where we are able to mix and match and bring in processes together because of the understanding we have from hypnosis. I hope
Okay.
that's
Are we
clear
going?
for.
Yeah, that is very much clear. So, are we going to touch upon the other techniques that we use, or are we going to keep it for later?
uh, Depending upon what the questions that come up and so on. But briefly speaking,
Okay.
because as a field, the field is very extensive. We had like True
Mhm.
Talks was a 22 episode series where we have covered this in depth. It's almost like a 30-hour masterclass that we did. What we are trying to do
Mhm.
today is basically summarize all of that into one hour 15-minute
Right.
session, right?
Very well.
So if there
Right.
are specific questions that come up about techniques, I'll be more than happy to provide an answer. Uh, but apart from that, if you have certain questions, let's cover that up first, and then we
Yeah.
look at any other thing that we want to talk about.
Okay. Sounds good. So, next question, Nathan, is that while you've integrated so many fields together, why the title cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy?
So the title cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy is because we wanted to give upon an impression that we are working with clients both at the conscious and the unconscious level. The word
Right.
cognitive for most people creates an impression that we are working with the conscious mind, right? And
Mm-hmm.
hypnosis as a word is generally being used to signify subconscious, unconscious, whichever terminology you want to use. And that's the reason
Mm-hmm.
why we brought in cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy. And psychotherapy because its application towards different therapeutic approaches, right? Uh,
Very.
Apart from that, also, uh, in our understanding, we recognize that in classical hypnosis, there was no emphasis on conscious mind at all, which I personally think is a mistake. You can't work with a
Mm-hmm.
client unless you know how to take a proper interview, right? And
Yes.
um, different ways in which you can take an interview. So all of that got incorporated as a part of the program, and that's why cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy.
Yeah, yeah, it looks like a beautiful amalgamation. Nathan, next question is that what are the key principles that you use in CHP, so cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy?
So, Misbah, there are a lot of principles because you have borrowed from a lot of fields. But I'm going to talk about just the basic ones so that at least the overall understanding is clear for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for us, the primary understanding of the primary principle is all fields of psychology are can work in a way in which they can complement each other. So whether it's cognitive, behavioral, psychoanalysis, or it's humanistic, we don't have to see them as competing fields, but as different ways of looking at the same thing. It's like you're working with a client which is like an elephant, right? And
Mm-hmm.
each of these fields are like five or four blind people, each of them trying to understand the problem and help the client resolve the problem with the help of that particular modality that they have, thinking what they have is the complete tool. When you actually have someone who can look at all of those modalities from a distance, they see that they're all part of the bigger cycle, right? That's the first principle that we look at.
Okay.
Okay. Second is that when a client comes to us, a client always knows about their life more than we know. So it's very, very person centric. There is nothing that we do where we would actually bring in or suggest anything to the client.
Okay.
Okay, that's the second part.
Mm-hmm.
Third is the understanding of hypnosis that I spoke about earlier, right? For us, hypnosis is that tool that can help people integrate almost any field of mental sciences together,
Mm-hmm.
provided you understand it correctly and you don't get into the myths and misconceptions that are surrounding the same, right?
Okay.
And then lastly, that there are when you work with a client from a therapy point of view, a client has problems which are layered, and depending upon which layer you're working on, you would decide which approach of therapy you're using. Ideally, if a particular approach doesn't work, you need to be skilled to understand what will be the next layer of the problem that you're working with. So the layers to summarize would quickly be being able to help the client define their presenting problem and the desired outcome, helping them understand what is the behavioral change that they need to create, which is the second layer, Third layer would be to
Mhm.
understand what are their ongoing present thoughts and emotions that are stopping them from changing their behaviors. Fourth
Mhm.
layer would be what are the beliefs, values, defense mechanisms that are driving our and positive intentions that are driving our ongoing thoughts and emotions. Next layer would
Okay.
be any past trauma or deeper emotional suppression that is leading to the current problem, which is leading to the beliefs and then the current thoughts and the behaviors. And eventually, the last layer is past experiences which have led to these suppressions. So, when you're working with the clients, you need to be aware of all of these layers. You need to be skilled at working with all these layers. That doesn't mean that you need to work with all the layers. It simply means that if you start working at a particular layer and it is not working, you know what to do next.
Right. Right. I think that very well explains how the process runs. So, Nathan, there are a few questions that we have from the viewers. So, I think Sanjana has asked a question that what are the basic skills required by the practitioner according to you?
Well, basic skills required by practitioners would be to help clients get into a highly receptive state, which is one. We call it hypnosis, but in any other form, and if you're using any other processes, if you're using meditations, if you're using guided visualizations, then all of those are different ways of inducing a hypnotic state. So that's one.
Right.
Second, obviously, questioning
Mm-hmm.
tools. You need to know what questions to ask clients. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Third is the ability to listen to the client clearly and not listen to what your interpretations are, but listen to what the client is really saying.
Okay.
Okay? Uh, and this is where the biggest skill that I have identified the therapists need is the ability to learn or the ability to keep their mouth shut.
Okay.
This probably
Yeah.
is one of the biggest skills.
Yes. So yeah, I think Sanjana that gives you clarity of what kind of skills a practitioner should have or should practice while working with clients. There's a question from
And
Bindu Nathan.
just a
You
second,
want to share?
Misbah. And
Ah,
also, this is just I'm just giving you a brief understanding of the key skills. Obviously, there are a lot of
right.
skills. Matlab in terms of, for example, to really be able to understand how the conditioning in the mind happens, how you can help people identify their thoughts, mindfulness. So all of these are, but all of these are applications. The key principles would be what I said in my understanding: the ability to keep your mouth
Mhm.
shut, the ability to ask the right questions, to listen to people clearly in terms of what they are saying, and to be able to get them into an altered receptive state. Sorry, got this
Absolutely.
one.
Okay. So there's one more question, Nathan, from Bindu. Can you share how do you go about inducing hypnotic state and what kind of clients benefit from it?
So, Bindu, every client that we work with, we induce a hypnotic state. It'll either be conversationally, like I'm talking to all of you, or it could be in through like an induction and a deepening process and so on. Now, what I mean by this is, uh, so let me first give you an example of what hypnosis is to maybe understand why I'm saying that you can also induce hypnosis conversationally. Have you ever watched a movie that you were so engrossed in that you were completely influenced by it?
Yeah.
If yes, to an extent where you knew that the scene in the movie is a scene in a
Mhm.
movie, it's not happening in your real life, but you were emotionally touched by it,
Very much.
then you were in a hypnotic state. Because consciously, you know it's not something that's happening in your life,
Okay.
but you are still getting influenced at a deeper level,
Yes.
right? So, when we talk about hypnosis, for us, hypnosis is that it's not necessarily an altered state where a client is lying down on a couch with their eyes closed and so on. It's a state where the client's unconscious is receptive to respond to what we are saying or to respond to what the client has chosen,
Right.
right? Now, once we understand this, there are multiple ways of inducing a hypnotic state. Uh, there are times when I'm just using conversational hypnosis principles to work with the client's
Mhm.
unconscious. So, for example, many a times when a client comes to us for a therapy, and I tell the client that before you met me, the problems that you were facing were these, right? The client says yes. Now, the client consciously is not realizing, but I've actually told him the problems that you were facing were these. It's literally giving an impression to the unconscious that something is beginning to change now, and the conscious may not even be able to pick it up.
Yes.
Right? For
Yes,
us,
that makes
even that's
sense.
a hypnotic process. But if I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about an out and out hypnotic process, we use guided imagery, we use confusion. I would use mindfulness as a very powerful tool to induce a hypnotic state. Relaxation is another one that we use, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in most cases, I use pacing and leading, which is I would just begin with whatever the client is doing. So if the client is looking at a
Mm-hmm.
glass of water, I'll tell them, as you look at the glass of water, you can start thinking about the problems that you have in your life. And as you're thinking
You,
about those
s-
problems in your life,
you
right?
said, and I started looking at a glass of water.
I know that. So if you have a glass, and that's what we mean by hypnosis, that it's not just about inducing people into that eyes closed state. It's about being able to influence people at a deeper layer, at a deeper level, uh, where they consciously want to engage with you, but they're consciously not really necessarily understanding what that association is.
Mm.
Right? And there are a lot of techniques that you can use to induce a hypnotic state, but these are some of the ones that I've spoken about that are used more extensively.
Okay.
And how clients
Very
can
well.
benefit from it, to answer that question,
Yes.
uh, Bindu, just think about it this way: when a client comes to you for a therapy, is a client in a receptive state better or a client in a non-receptive state better? I'm sure a client in a receptive state is better than a client in a non-receptive state. That's where hypnosis comes in. You are just using it as a process to be able to help them get into a receptive state. Once they're in that state, so even if you don't use, for example, the approach that we use, where we are able to integrate a lot of these things together. Let's say you've only learned guided imagery or hypnosis, and you have learned CBT, right? You could use the same processes that you use in CBT in with the client in a hypnotic state.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the beauty of hypnosis, that it becomes like that underlying theme with which you will be able to connect
Mm.
almost any other field of therapy that you have learned. We are just doing it a bit more extensively. We're incorporating a lot of other things so that it becomes like a real comprehensive program. Okay, but I hope
I'm
that
sure
answers
this
your question,
answers.
Bindu. If you have a follow-up question, please ask so that I can clarify.
Yes, she does have a follow-up question, but that is no. There's one more second question. How many sessions are generally required to deal with any issues?
So that depends upon the issue that we are working with. If you are working with phobias, one session in most cases is enough. At max, we will require two sessions. But if you're working with other issues, let's say you're working with a relationship breakdown, you're working with anxiety issues, you're working with clients who have depression who are also under psychiatric treatment, then obviously the number of sessions changes, right? On an average, we consider that 6 to 8 sessions is probably a good number of sessions for most clients to see results. Clients generally start noticing result by the third session. Uh, the following sessions for us is to more ensure that whatever changes we have created becomes more sustainable, and the chances of relapse reduces dramatically.
Okay. Okay. I'm
But
I'm
six to
sure
eight sessions,
Bindu
I
this.
think, is good enough. Exception to this is obviously if you're working with a client who's under psychiatric treatment, then you're working with the psychiatrist and with the guidance of psychiatrist. So at times, psychiatrists may tell you at what pace you want to work with, which is completely fine.
Mhm.
Also, if you're working with, let's say, a physical issue. So, for example, if you're working with a client who has um, chronic back pain, right? And a part of that is also because there is a structural problem in the back for which they are taking a treatment with a physiotherapist, or they have a surgery to go to. Then obviously your number of sessions would change because you are again working with another specialist, and you have to kind of what should I say? Plan your sessions in a way in which both your work complements each other, right? Uh, and that's important, that what we do is not like, while we incorporate a lot of things with clients, that's not to say that this is a replacement for anything else. If you need a surgery, you need a surgery, you can use what we are doing as a complementary tool to either increase the effectiveness of the surgery, reduce the pain that people experience pre, during, or post surgery, or to increase the speed at which they recover.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that duration would change, but on an average, 6 to 8 sessions is what we talk about. Right. Also, Misbah, in terms of principle, probably one more principle that I would share, which I think is important,
Sure.
is the idea that every problem that the client has, whether
Mm-hmm.
we think it's psychological or we think it's physical,
Mm-hmm.
has a psychological
Mm-hmm.
component to it. The psychological component may be the cause of the problem or maybe the effect of the problem, and both of them are possible. And with the kind of work that we do, we can help clients work with both. And this is actually true for any kind of psychotherapy practice. So it's not just what we
Yes.
are doing in CHP. If you are someone who is using, let's say, uh, let's say CBT, right? There are places where people come and tell you that I have thoughts which are leading to my problems, and there could also be
Mm-hmm.
physical issues that are there that are creating a problem for them. But those physical issues then create a difference in their thought patterns, and those thoughts actually create further issues. So when you work
Mm-hmm.
with clients from a therapy point of view, don't just look at therapy as you're only working with the cause. At times, you can work with the cause and the effect both.
Mm-hmm. Very well. Bindu, I think this answers your questions clearly. Bindu has also mentioned that she is missed on True Talks. So, Bindu, actually, you can watch our True Talks entire series on Aicha's YouTube channel, right, Nathan?
It's completely available on the YouTube channel. There are 22 episodes on it, and it's, I think, over a period of around 30 hours. So each episode 1 hour, and there are around 22 episodes on that, 1 to 1.5 hours.
So, yes, Bindu, if you're there, you can definitely go on the Aicha's YouTube page and you can check all the videos of True Talks with therapist and the other one. So there's a next question, Nathan, that whether hypnosis works for non-suggestive clients from Nena.
So, Nana, hypnosis is a state of receptivity, right? Now, if the
Mm-hmm.
client is in a receptive state, then they're in a receptive state. The question generally is, can classical hypnotic techniques be used with clients who are not receptive? So the answer to that is different clients are receptive for different things. So if you think of one particular hypnotic process and you say, Nitin, will this process work for every client? The answer is no, it wouldn't. But if you were to ask me that, Nitin, no matter who the client is, as long as they are in a position where they can mentally understand what you are saying, right? Can some or the other hypnotic processes be used for them? The answer is yes, it can.
Okay. Yeah. And Nana, this answers your question. And there is a question from Malika. Can you give us a case where this principle was used and comparative understanding of using one modality by itself? I don't know which principle she's talking about, but
Okay, so
Malika, can you just? Okay,
let me
go
share
ahead.
probably a case study with all of you, so that may make it easier for you, right?
Mhm.
So I was recently working with a client who uh, had weight issues, and her concern was that I just am not able to stop eating in spite of the fact that my doctors have told me that now this is reaching a state where it will really be a health concern. Matlab, she had almost reached a place where she told me that, Nitin, I feel so frustrated that this conversation should make me stop eating sweets. But I go out of
Mhm.
my way. I would be going to my hospital for work, and along the
Mhm.
way, I would actually go to, I would change my route to go to my favorite sweet shop and eat sweet when I know I should not be. And she said, I have tried using thought restructuring processes where I would actually work with the thoughts and I would try to restructure my thoughts and remind myself that this is bad for me. But she says it's almost like an internal compulsion that I'm not able to
Mhm.
control, right? And she says when I'm able to control it, it's almost like so much of an effort that I can't tell you. It just feels it's far more easier to just eat it, and that's the reason why I would end up giving up my diet plans so frequently, right? Now, when I started working with her, we began with a cognitive interview where I asked her about the sweets that she eats and when are the times when the need for sweet eating is very high and so on. So I got the cognitive triggers from her, right? Next, I went into a metaphorical process that's called transformational metaphor, where we actually asked the
Mhm.
client to get into a hypnotic state where they first describe their current life, the problems that they have in the current life, in terms of a garden. So we converted into a metaphor. They describe the entire
Mhm.
metaphor for us. Then we ask them to think about a life that they have where they have been able to resolve the problem and describe it in terms of garden again. So that's again like a resolved future metaphorically. Once they gave us the metaphors, then we asked them to compare the two gardens, identify what steps they need to take in the old garden, to transform it into the new garden. And then eventually we make them go through a hypnotic process where they go into the old garden, they make all of those changes in the garden, they see how those changes are taking place, and eventually we give them a suggestion saying that whatever you have done right now, your unconscious will begin to bring it up to your conscious awareness so that you understand the exact steps that you need to take in your real life. And if there are certain
Mhm.
steps that you're finding it difficult to take consciously, your unconscious will support you in being able to take those steps, right? So
Okay.
we would do this process. Now when I was doing this process with her, what happened was, when she was looking at creating a change in the garden from the old to the new garden, she got stuck, and she said that, Nitin, there is a part of the garden that I'm just not able to change, right?
Mhm.
Now for me, that gives me an indication that there is a positive intention, that I can see it in front of me. Either I'm not able to change it, or I am trying to change it but it's coming up again and again, right? So in the client's garden, it was like a thorn. No, it was like a cactus. She said, I'm trying to cut it off, throw it away, but every time I throw it away, it grows back again. So
Okay.
that's the place where I was able to bring in the NLP process of reframing. So in the garden metaphor, while I'm doing metaphor, I bring in the
Reframing.
reframing process. We complete the reframing. Actually, not even complete the reframing. While we are in the middle of reframing process, when we talk about the positive intention, what the positive intention is, the positive intention comes up as need for safety and security, right? And the client, in that state, when I'm asking her that, while she is able to narrate to me what the positive intention is that she was not aware of consciously, when I asked her where is this need coming from, she still consciously was not able to answer me that. Then we take her from there into what we call as an ego state room or an inner child process, which is a hypnotic process, or an inner child in itself is a separate process also now. So they go into that process. We invite the child which has a need for that safety, that security. That child narrates to her how there was a time in her childhood where she had an experience of molestation, and someone told her, because you look beautiful, people will take advantage of you. And as a part of that uh, experience, the mind kind of picked up on this, and she said, I don't want to be beautiful any longer. And in her head, probably there was another association between weight and beautiful, and that's where she started picking up weight, right? So when we
Oh,
did that inner child process, we came back to the positive intention process. In the positive intention process, then we were able to work with that by finding alternate ways of keeping safe and secure. And then when she removed the cactus did not come back again.
oh, that's lot very beautifully, integrated all the processes and brought about change at the various levels.
Right, but then this was not the end. So when we did this,
Okay,
she went
there's
back
more to
home.
it.
That's more to it, because this all happened in a single session,
Mhm.
right? She went back home. She came back after a week, and she told me that her eating habits have improved drastically, but there are still specific places where she feels that she is not able to control her eating habits, and that was more with respect to when she was alone at her place, right? That's when we brought her. We went back into a hypnotic state where we asked her to identify what those thought processes are when she's alone. And once she was able to identify those thought processes, we connected it to the CBT restructuring process. We use when then statements with clients to be able to help them restructure their thoughts. And that's what we brought in. So that's how we combined the client's awareness through mindfulness in a hypnotic state, combined with
Mhm.
when then statement for thought restructuring, right? And then we did a future pacing, which is an NLP process for anchoring, where she could feel a natural repulsion towards the food that was unhealthy for her, and she would naturally feel more inclined towards eating food that was healthier options,
Very well. I
right?
think that gives a lot of clarity.
So
Anything
in
else that you
these
would like to
two
add?
sessions, I was actually able to club and combine so many things together because of the approach that we follow. And for the client, it was not like we are abruptly going from one technique into another. For the client, it was like, yeah,
Mhm.
it's like an ongoing process. It's a seamless process for them.
Absolutely. Nitin, I think Malika has asked the question about how many sessions a client need to attend. So, Malika, I think he's already touched upon it about having somewhere around 6 to 8 sessions, depending upon the outcome the client wants to achieve, and how we are working in tandem with other professionals also, if we have in picture. Right, Nathan?
Correct.
Uh, okay, there's a question from Sridhar. Hello, Nathan. Is there any cross check where I will come to know that I am not putting my interpretation while what client is talking to me?
So, Sridhar, the way we work with clients is such that it's a part of our training itself, right? So, the idea is, as I said, for me, the underlying principle is the client knows the most. There is no way that I would ever know more about the client than the client knows. Because I have this underlying theme and underlying principle in my head, it becomes a lot more easier as I have to listen to the client. And if you have the ability to listen to the client, then generally you will not allow your biases to play out, right?
Mhm.
Secondly, in the approach that we follow, because content is not as important. So, for example, if a client came and told me that I have a relationship issue with a particular person and I'm very angry and I want to express myself, but I'm not able to express myself to that person, I may not
Mhm.
even necessarily know who that person is, what is the conflict about. I can literally run them through the hypnodrama process and club it with a couple of other things to ensure that the client can do the process in their mind and they can get a result. Because I don't need to know the content, my bias playing up in the content becomes unlikely. This also helps
Mhm.
extensively when clients have issues that they are not comfortable talking to you about. Because in classical
Mhm.
therapy, unless the client discusses their problems with you can't really
Right.
work with them, right? In
Right.
the way we work, even if the client comes and tells me that I have a problem, I would not like to discuss much about the problem with you. I would ask them specific questions. Is that problem related to a particular person, a group of people, or is it related to a particular emotion, right? Or is there a
Okay.
pattern? Depending upon what answer the client gives, I would choose a particular set of processes. And then once they're in the process, because what happens with our work is once the client is in the process, what experiences they're having determines what we will do next. And that's the reason, again, why our biases playing up becomes unlikely.
Mhm. Okay. Nathan, Anu has asked a question that she is a counseling and rehabilitation psychologist and she's done her CBT certificate course. She wants to know that can she use other therapies in her practice or does she need to do a certification course first for
Manu,
other
who is
practices, I
asking
think.
question?
Anu.
So, Anu, if you're working in a rehabilitation setup, and if you're working as a clinical psychologist, then you need to complete your MPhil in clinical psychology with the RCI registered institute. If
Nathan,
you're practicing,
she is a
yes,
counseling psychologist,
okay.
counseling
If you're
and rehabilitation.
Okay. If you are a counseling psychologist and you're practicing with the rehabilitation setup as a counselor, right? Then, as long as you have the educational qualification to work in the rehabilitation setup, every other program that you're talking about, including CBT or hypnosis or CHP or any other field, is only a
Mhm.
skill that you're developing. You're basically using it as a part of your overall process, but your
Mhm.
eligibility comes from what your educational qualification is. Once you have that qualification, as long as you have the skills to apply other processes, you can apply it. If the question is I have not got those skills but I want to watch YouTube videos and learn certain techniques and apply those techniques with my clients, I would suggest don't do it, because some of those techniques are very extensive, and if you have not been trained properly, then there could be a problem. It's not as much about certification, it's more about the skills that you have and that you have developed.
Absolutely. So I'm sure Anu that answers your question. There's a question from Reva. She's a counselor, counseling psychologist, and would like to know where does this therapy work the best? That is cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy.
It will work everywhere except where you're working with a client who is not in touch with reality at all,
Yeah. So
right?
in fact,
With
Nitin,
your-
I'll just add another question so that you can club the both the questions. So there's a question from Gayatri also. Can hypnosis work with schizophrenia as they have hallucination? And if you could share an example.
all right. All right. So I think both the questions are related. So I'm going to answer them together.
Yeah.
Uh, you can use CHP as a process anywhere and everywhere, because CHP doesn't only include hypnosis; it includes a lot of other tools, right? So any place where you're
Right.
going to counsel a client, you could still use elements of CHP as a part of your counseling processes. Having said that, as far as hypnosis is concerned, in its classical sense, of asking people to close their eyes and get into an altered state where you're asking them to imagine or visualize certain things. Those are things that you will not use with clients who have hallucinations, not when they are not stable. The way
Mm-hmm.
to work with these clients is that you work in consultation with a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist first ensures that the client stabilize, and then you start looking at what are the underlying issues which may have led to this particular problem, right? And that's when
Mm-hmm.
you can start incorporating any of these therapeutic processes that we are talking about, including hypnosis. But if you're using hypnosis in an imagery based process, then in that case I would only do it if we are working as a part of a hospital setup where there's psychiatrists as a part of that setup. Generally what I do is we have students who are trained psychiatrists and also are trained by us, so I would actually refer clients to them because they are in the best state to be able to work with those clients. The ones who have been trained by us, who are psychiatrists and who also use CHP, have given me very good feedback about how they've been able to club this together and get results, even with clients who classically you would not work with using hypnosis, right? But in this case, uh, we are working in consultation with a psychiatrist, or it's a psychiatrist who also trained in CHP, which is cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy.
Okay, I think that answers your question. There's one more question from Shija. How to deal with person with anxiety? Can this therapy help? Therapy that can help, or
Okay.
that's
So
what she's asking.
here with clients who have anxiety, while there are a couple of other things that we need to do, but one process that I have got remarkable results with is a transformational metaphor that I spoke about earlier, where we convert things into garden. A video for that is already available on the iChaz YouTube channel. So if you want, there's a complete demonstration of the transformational metaphor, which is there on iChaz YouTube channel. You can watch it out, and it can actually help you understand how we work with clients from an unconscious point of view. Now, especially with anxiety, the reason I'm talking about the metaphor process is because the challenge that a lot of people face when they're working with anxiety clients is you want the client to get relaxed, but you can't tell them to relax because the word relaxation itself for a lot of them is actually a trigger for anxiety. Every
Yes.
person they meet, they tell them that chill, relax. That bothers them because they don't know how to relax. If they were able to, they wouldn't be in the state that they are in, right? And that's
Yeah.
the place where what we do becomes a lot more important because we don't actually have to tell client to relax. We have processes
Mm-hmm.
where the client simply follows the process. They are able to relax, which is one. They can learn those processes to relax, which is two. And third, whatever are the underlying reasons that were causing anxiety in the first place, we are able to help them resolve that. And if you are a counselor and if you're looking at one particular process, I would highly recommend check out the transformational metaphor on the iChaz YouTube channel. That probably is one technique that can do wonders when you're working with clients. And I've had some remarkable results with it. I've had clients referred by psychiatrists where the psychiatrist has called me up later on to tell me what did you do, how did the person just feel so much more better at the end of 2 sessions,
Absolutely.
right? And people who probably
Okay.
have been on medicines for years now. Will it work for every client? Obviously, there is no process that works for every client, but the success rate for that with anxiety clients for me is near perfect in combination with certain other
Right.
things.
Okay. So I'm sure, Shija, this answers your question. And there's a question from Bhakti asking hypnosis is combination of CBT and other therapies.
No, what we do, which is cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy, is a combination of hypnosis, CBT, mindfulness, metaphors, also principles from psychoanalysis and behavioral therapy, right? And the entire approach is based on a very humanistic approach that everything that we do comes from the client. Uh, Hypnosis by itself is just a state of receptivity. You can combine it with any other field of therapy, like we have combined it with multiple fields. I
Right.
hope
So
Bhakti
I
that
think,
answers.
Bhakti, that answers your question. There's a question from Pushpa asking how to handle a client who's in denial.
So, Pushpa, with clients who are in denial, when they come to us for session, you have to check two things. One, is the client completely in denial? Because if they're completely in denial, I'm not sure why would they be coming to you for therapy, unless they are brought to you for therapy by someone else, right?
Mm.
Now, whenever a client is brought to you for therapy by someone else, where they don't think there's a problem, but they have been brought by someone, The way to work with that is I would sit with them and I would ask them, now that you have been brought over here, while you think there is no problem, how does that make you feel? And no client feels good about it. So while they may not think there is a problem in terms of why they've been brought to you, but they do recognize they're feeling unhappy, uncomfortable, or bad, whichever feeling, whichever terminology they want to use, about being brought to you for therapy when they don't think there's a problem. I would start from there
Okay.
and I'll ask them, what if I can help you deal with this feeling first? Because you're here. People from your family are going to bring you here whether you like it or not. There is no point feeling frustrated about it. You may as well enjoy the process. And when we start doing that, when we help them start feeling better about the fact that it's okay, they are coming to us for the sessions and they are fine with that idea, eventually they start opening up about things that they were earlier not opening up. And in that, at some place, consciously, unconsciously, they will touch upon the topic that they were earlier having denial about. And that's what gives us an entry,
Very well. So, Pushpa,
right?
I think that gives you an idea about how to go about working with those clients.
Now,
There's a
there's
question.
the second part.
Okay.
There's second part to that answer, Misbah, that when clients come to you for therapy, where they say that a part of me is in denial, because there are also places where people, let's say, have someone who has passed away. They logically know that the
Mm-hmm.
person has passed away, but a part of them is still not willing to accept, acknowledge the fact that the loss has happened.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, in that case, when we are working with clients, it's important to that's the place that I would actually use hypnosis, where I would first ask them to consciously narrate to me how did they get to know that the loss has taken place. Then they would be taken in a hypnotic state, and in that state, they would replay it in their mind till that acceptance becomes complete. And we know that that acceptance has become complete because the client immediately jumps into either an anger mode or a depression mode. So we basically go through the 5 stages of loss, um,
Yes.
uh, which are basically given by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in her book on death and dying. So that model of grief or loss, the stages of loss, is what we
Mm.
club with hypnosis and cognitive processes. So cognitively, they're able to tell us how did they know about it, and through hypnosis, we actually help them go through the entire process. Right? You can
Okay.
think of it as a combination of psychodrama, hypnosis, and cognitive interview.
Okay.
I hope that
So
answers
I'm
your
sure,
question.
Pushpa, that answers your question. There's a question from Malika. Can integrated systems help counseling psychologists because it's talk therapy?
See, the thing is, Malika, when clients come to you for therapy, at the end of the day, the client doesn't actually care about what technique you're going to use.
Hmm.
Going to help them. I have had clients who have actually come and told me I don't believe in hypnosis at all, and I don't think hypnosis will work for me. For example, right? I want you to just sit and talk to me, and through talk work, help me understand and resolve my problem. I would tell them, all right, let's. If you don't believe in hypnosis, I would not use hypnosis with you. But would you like me to do a process of relaxation for you? Or would you be comfortable if I asked you to become mindful of certain things, right? And the client says, yeah, I would be very happy with relaxation or mindfulness. I use the exact same process that I would use in hypnosis for mindfulness and relaxation, and through that we worked with the client and they got the results. So the client doesn't really come with a technical understanding of what we are going to do. Sadly, most therapists don't know what hypnosis is, right? So if the idea is, Nitin, do I necessarily need to ask the client to close their eyes while I'm working with the client? The answer is no. If the
Hmm.
question is, during a conversation, can I use hypnotic principles to be able to help the client create a change, right? Or can use quick guided imagery processes without really inducing them into like deeper trances? Can that be done? The answer is yes. But it's just that it requires a particular level of skill.
Okay. So Malika, I think it gives you a clarity about how to work with any kind of processes with your clients. There's a question from Gayatri Nathan that do self hypnosis really work? Self hypnosis with binaural beats are often heard. How well they work on subconscious mind?
Okay.
So there are
And
three
Manu, who was
questions.
asked the question?
Gayatri.
Gayatri. So, Gayatri, does self hypnosis work? Self hypnosis can work, but can one process in self hypnosis work for everyone? The answer is no. The idea is to be able to help the client that you're working with devise a process of self hypnosis that works for them. And if you can help the client create that process, yes, it will work for the client. As far as binaural beats are concerned, the way binaural beats work is basically that your mind is hearing two different frequencies of tone and the mind adjusts to it. So, does it reduce the level of activity in the mind? In most cases, yes, it would. Would it necessarily mean that that would induce a self hypnotic state? Not necessarily. I hope that that's clear for you.
Yeah, but she also asked the question that if how well they work on subconscious. So I think that gives a clarity. Not necessary when you say that at times it will work, at times it may not.
Correct.
Okay, great. There's a question
So it's
from
more, it's एक second, Anushka. So it's more about whether the process for self hypnosis that is being used by the person is conducive for that person or not. It's not really whether self hypnosis will work for them.
okay, yeah, that will distinguish it well. Another Gayatri, and she has a question that can hypnosis work with schizophrenia as they have hallucination? And if you have, you can give an example.
So Gayatri, I actually answered that question already earlier about hallucinations. And that
Yeah,
we
you
actually
did.
work in consultation with psychiatrists over there. We would not directly work with those clients by ourselves. The psychiatrist then decides what kind of work we can do and we cannot do with the client. What I do generally is, as I said, we have trained practitioners who are psychiatrists and also have been trained by us. We generally refer people to them. And their response to me has been that it's worked for a lot of their clients where nothing else worked, including in cases where they had hallucinations. It's just that obviously they need to work with it in a way where they're able to monitor things. They are able to give them medicines when the medicines are required to stabilize the client and do the processes that they need to do to be able to help the client deal with those situations.
Mhm.
If you are asking me for a case from me in terms of when I work with the client, so I was working with a client who would hear voices, right? She was under psychiatric medicines. The psychiatrist had referred the client to me because the client was starting to have side effects of the medicines now, and the parents were almost adamant that we want to stop medicines even if it creates another set of problems for the client, because the problems that they are facing because of the medicines are already very high. And that's the time
Mhm.
when the psychiatrist had referred the client to me. When we started working with the client, I was obviously in constant conversation with the psychiatrist in terms of on a session by session basis in with respect to what I'm planning to do right now with the client. What are the possible side effects that I can expect? If those side effects are there, then I would request the psychiatrist to use certain medicine to be able to monitor the client so that they can change the dosage of medicines that they were giving to the client, right?
Okay.
When we worked with the client with the auditory hallucinations, it took us 4 sessions of what we were doing. The
Mhm.
client continued with medicine for some more time after that, but the dosage of medicines was reduced over a period of time, and that was not reduced by me. I have no say in the dosage of medicine. That obviously is handled by the psychiatrist. But the psychiatrist was able to see the improvement in the client, and as the psychiatrist saw the improvement, they reduced the dosage of the medicine.
Mhm. Okay. Nitin, there's a question from Amit asking क्या hypnosis से depression अच्छा हो सकता है?
Again, Amit, the reason why it's difficult to answer that question is because hypnosis is not one thing, right? So if you're asking if I can take a client in a hypnotic state and when I work with them, does it increase my chances of helping the client overcome their depression? The answer is yes, surely, because the client is in a more receptive state. But it all depends on what you're doing with the client in that hypnotic state. It's not just about inducing a hypnotic state, it's about what process you're using. So let's say if you were to say, Nitin, I'm trained in CBT, I'm trained in REBT, and I'm achieving X amount of success with my clients when it comes to depression. Can I combine hypnosis with it and would it give me greater results? The answer would be yes. So whatever success you are getting, the degree of success will increase once you apply hypnosis with it. But just understand that hypnosis is not one thing. Hypnosis is just a state. What technique you use in that would depend upon whether it helps the client resolve the problem or it escalates the problem further. For example, you can use hypnosis with the client who has hallucinations and make them worsen their hallucinations.
Oh.
And you can also use techniques in a hypnotic state where the hallucinations start reducing. So it just depends on what you're
Mhm.
doing in that state. What processes are you using over there?
Very well. Then there's a question from Shrija again that how to help a couple having a relationship problem. Husband not able to accept the wife, married since 1.5 years. According to the husband, his wife is not according to his expectations.
Okay. So we had a complete episode on relationship, I think a couple of days back. I would actually suggest
Yeah,
check that episode up once, because in
on the
that we've
True Talks.
discussed on the psych talks also we had, I think, a couple
Side
of
Talks
days.
also, yes, we had, yes.
Correct.
On the 6th
So
of 6th of June episode, we had it.
correct. So the 6th June episode is the one where we discussed about relationship in detail. So that's one that I would suggest that you should check out. Also, along with that, in the True Talk series, we've spoken about hypnodrama extensively. Hypnodrama in combination with what I spoke about right now, about the sixth June episode, is where you will get a lot of answers with respect to relationship, because relationship in itself is a big topic, and I think we're almost already reaching the end of this, so it will be difficult for me to say the entire thing again right now. But this that episode contains a lot of details. Just club that
Right.
with
So
hypnodrama and you're good.
So yes, Shrija, you can refer to the relationship episode of Psych Talks as well as the True Talks episode. So that should give you a lot of clarity while working with this client details. There's also one other question from Shrija about what about addictions, drugs, sex, etc. in adolescents, especially. Can you work with this? I think that's what she's asking.
Ideally, what we do is it should be one of the go-to tools for addiction in combination with rehabilitation centers, because one of the biggest challenges with addictions that people face is not that people give up addictions, but the problem with relapses. And
Yes.
that's where we come in. So the way we recommend using CHP with de-addiction is this: that if the client is like addicted to an extent that they can't be without that substance or that object or whatever that addiction is for even a day, then it's better to put them in a rehabilitation center first. The rehabilitation center would help them get off their addiction, and while they are in the de-addiction center, before they come out of that, you start working with them to ensure that you can work with the underlying issues that led to the addiction, so that the chances of relapse is reduced dramatically. But if you're talking about addictions in the sense of, let's say, a porn addiction or a cigarette addiction, which which is not making the client dysfunctional completely, right? They are able to function, but there are additional challenges or hindrances that the addiction is causing. Then by what we are doing, that itself can be enough. What we work with addictions is a couple of things. One, addictions have underlying causes that we need to work with, which will generally be either emotional in nature or would have certain positive intention associated to it. So those are two things that we will surely address. We will also bring in behavioral psychology, where we will create like a conditioned repulsion towards the addictive object. So right now, if the client smokes and if that's what they're addicted to, I would actually literally create an association between cigarettes and the smell of garbage. So much so that every time the client, and if they hate the garbage smell, it will be very difficult for them to actually put that cigarette in their mouth after that. If they like garbage smell, then probably you need to create a different condition. So with
Right.
addictions, these are the things that we'll do. One, if required, work in consultation with a rehabilitation center. Second, work on underlying emotional issues and positive intentions. Third, create a conditioned response which is aversive to what the client originally had.
Right. There's a question from Malika about can CHP can be used with adolescents?
It can be. Uh, See, as I said, there are different components of CHP. So, with adolescents, actually, with adolescents, you can use almost everything that we are doing in CHP. With smaller kids, which I mean, kids which are probably smaller than 10. With those kids, you will not use advanced processes that we do in hypnosis and inner child and all of that. You will probably stick to what we cover in the first two levels, but you will use a lot of metaphors that we cover in our programs, a lot of guided imageries that we use in our programs, which are basic imageries with these kids. With adolescents, you can use more or less everything that we are doing. Above 15, almost everything that we do can be used. Below 15, between 10 to 15, still the advanced processes in inner child and regression and so on, I would avoid. I would refrain.
Very well. So, Nathan, since you're already talking about the applications and kind of a limitations where you would limit the process of using limit using CHP. So, my next question is about where the CHP can be applied. What are the limitations where you will not apply them or use them?
So, Ms. As I said, I've already actually answered that question, but to
Yeah, you
summarize
have.
that,
If there's anything else you want to add to it.
sure. So, I don't think there's much to add, but to summarize that, for example, with hypnosis, in terms of when you're inducing a deeper relaxed state, you don't want to use deeper relaxation processes with clients who have low blood pressure or who have epileptic seizures, because deep
Okay.
relaxation has a potential to trigger both of those situations further, right? There are other
Mm-hmm.
hypnotic processes that you can use with them which does not depend on relaxation, but those processes cannot be used. Also, the client has to be in a mental state to be able to listen to you and understand you. I'm not talking about clients who come and say that I don't believe hypnosis works, I don't believe CHP works, or I don't think psychology is of any use. With those clients you can work with. But if a client is in a mental state where when you say to something to them, they're not able to comprehend that, then obviously
So,
what we are doing will not work for them. Okay, their
so can we
ability to
say when they're
comprehend
not
what we are
in
saying is important.
So can we say that somebody who's not a client who's not in touch with the reality is a client wherein they will first require a psychiatric help and then they can
Correct. But
later
in
on.
that case, but the difference is in that case, I'm not saying that CHP will not work. I'm simply saying that they will first need to go to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist should be able to stabilize them, and then we can work with CHP to ensure that that the chances of relapse is reduced dramatically. Right?
Okay.
But with people who have low blood pressure and who have epileptic seizures, I'm literally saying that deep relaxation processes should be avoided. Not CHP. There are other things in CHP that you can do with them, but deep relaxation processes have to be avoided.
Right.
Also, with very small kids, we will probably not use all the major techniques, only limited techniques will be applied.
Okay. So Nathan, we are almost past 5 o'clock, like past our time by 10-15 minutes. And we had a lovely session. I had a very informative session hosting it, and I'm sure everybody who's been part of it, the viewers have got all the answers and they've got a clarity. In fact, if you have any more questions, you can definitely get in touch with him or at Aicha's center. And there's also one question from Prarthana, I think, and she's saying that can we have a session on NLP and its techniques? So, Prarthana will definitely take into consideration. But is there anything, Nathan, that you want to share on that?
So, Pratna, what we can do rather than having one episode on technique. So the challenge with, and that's the reason why we did the entire True Talks for Therapists wala season, because in that we were able to pick up individual techniques from hypnosis, from NLP that we not just spoke about. Some of them were also demonstrated. So, like I spoke about fast phobia cure in the beginning, the True Talk series, we have actually demonstrated the entire technique. So, what I'm going to do is, for all of your reference, I'm sharing the link in the comments for the True Talks for Therapists playlist. I would suggest for all of you who are looking at getting exposure to the techniques, literally demonstrations and understanding each of those things in detail, then that is probably one of the episodes, one of the series that I would ask you to go through first. And after that, if you have specific questions about specific techniques, let me know. And probably not in this season, but in the next season of Psych Talks or True Talks, we will take up those techniques and surely have more details and more discussions about that. And while we are coming to an end of this season, because I think these are after this, there are three more episodes, Misbah, right? For
True. True.
right.
Yeah.
So once we come to an end of this season, we are planning for certain things for the next season. So if you have any ideas that you think we have not covered in this season and you would like us to cover in the next season, please let us know. We would surely like to incorporate any of your suggestions. We are very happy with the kind of response that we have got with all the series that we have run, and I'm really thankful and glad that you have found this useful. After Psych Talk comes to an end, we are going back to True Talks with Mamta and me, probably, or Mamta and Misbah would host that, where we will do True Talks for coaches. where the complete, like we had eclectic therapy, we will completely have session by session discussion on coaching and different components and different models of coaching. So if you have any of those ideas that you want us to do, please put it up. We would surely incorporate them, if not in this season, then in the coming seasons.
Absolutely. So, once again, thank you, Nitin, for your valuable inputs and time. And thank you, everybody who's been watching us. And I'm going to see you tomorrow again at 4. And tomorrow's topic that we have is techniques for child psychology. And that's going to be by Riddhi Doshi. Um, yeah. So, thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening. And
Mr.
see you tomorrow.
Just last thing,
Yeah.
sorry, because I don't think I'm coming back on this series right now again. So I would
Mm-hmm.
also like to thank everyone, uh, all of you who have been viewers regularly, all of you who have actually been speakers. So really, really deep sense of thankfulness for all of those people who accepted the invitation to become a speaker, because that's helped us learn a lot, that I'm sure has helped a lot of the people who have watched these videos and watched this series has learn a lot. So I would like to thank all of them, and hopefully see you all for the next season. And I hope you are eagerly waiting for True Talks for Coaches also now.
Yes. So we keep you posted about it. That when does the next series start, and we look forward to seeing you. If you have any questions with regards to cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy, you can get in touch with us. So you can either ping us on the iChas Facebook iChas page, or you can visit us at www.ichas.com, or you can contact us on the number 8080208473. I'll be putting it into the comment section. So those who have any questions with respect to cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy, you can definitely get in touch with us with either of the mode of communication. And once again, have a lovely evening, and I'll see you tomorrow at 4. Bye bye. Thank you,
Bye
Nitin.
bye. Take care. Thank you.